Welcome to the webinar on setting up skills and standards-based grade reporting. I'm Beth Elliott, your trainer, and we will be going over how to set up the skills-based grade reporting in MMS generations. The first thing we need to do is to turn skills-based on. Right now we have just the regular grade reporting, so we need to get the skills menu up. And to do that, we're going to go in under Admin, Database Configuration. In here, we're going to go to the Grading tab, and at the bottom of the Grading tab is Skills-Based Grading, and we just check that to turn it on. Skills-Based Grading gives you the ability to take your subject and either just as a straight subject grade, and more importantly to go down to the various pieces of that grading so that you can make further assessment of how the student is going. We can also have the standard or subject-based grading turned on. The advantage of having the subject-based turned on is it gives the teachers the ability to track assignments for their students, and we can associate actually these standards or skills with those assignments. Once we have turned on the grade reporting for skills-based, we're going to click OK. And in order to see that menu show up, all we need to do is close the database and reopen. And when we reopen the database, we now have a new menu here for the skills-based grade reporting mode jobs. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on there, and we're going to come down to More Skill Grades, Editing Jobs, and we're going to set the marking periods. What the marking periods are is we're telling it which grades we want to work with. I've loaded up the 3 marking period defaults, which gives us 3 terms and the final average. If we would rather see trimester rather than term, you can highlight, and in this case I'm going to go up to Edit and Copy, and I can come down to my second term, click on it, and go back up to Edit and Paste, and I can continue to do that for each of my terms. And that gives us very nicely definitions of what we're used to seeing. You check beside that whether you want grades for those terms or marking periods, and also whether you want the teacher notes available for that marking period. You can at this point change the labels of your marking periods if you'd like to use something other than, in this case, T1, T2, T3, or maybe something different than FNL for your final average. That's entirely up to you. The display order is the order that you see the grades when they're in a list. So it's very straightforward in that. Once you've finished making any changes you need, you can come up and click on the Save and Exit button, and that will save it for you. The next thing we need to look at is the grades that we're going to use for the skills. And we do that under our Advanced Skills, More Skill Edit Jobs, and then we go to the Edit Valid Grades for the skill groups. These are going to be based on your report card and the areas that you need. You can have as many different grade groups as you need. It can be as simple as a yes/no mark, and you'd use the yellow plus to add in a new grade group. The grade groups codes themselves are limited to 4 characters. I would use letters, numbers, and/or the underline. Once you have added in a code, you can go to the Edit Grades, and that gives you an area where you can come in with your yellow plus and add in the different grades. The blank grade is usually the default grade. That's the grade you're going to see first. And if the teacher opens up, that's the grade that shows up. Beyond that, you can add as many different grades as you want. In this case, I've added the yes and the no, and you can add a description that goes with it. When we come back up to the OK button, we'll see that there's also a little blue diskette here, which is your save diskette. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And if we come up here, we can see, oh, save changes. That's what we just did. I'm going to also take a look at the EPIN grade group. And We're going to click on that and go to the Edit Grades. Within here, we added in a series of grades, and you can now add in descriptions to help the teachers as to know what the grades are. In this case, our E grade was exceeds expectations, and I'm going from the highest grade down to the lowest. We then have our proficient grade and an in-progress grade. We also have an N grade for not taught during this trimester, so you can give that to a particular skill saying, oh, I'm not covering currency this term, I'm going to cover that next term. We've also added some other grades that have asterisks with them to indicate your accommodations were made and the student received this grade with the accommodations in place. The display order is when the teachers see a list of the grades, what order do they see them in? And it's just a matter of changing them with the little spinner buttons that are here, so I can increase or decrease. As I said, you can have as many grades in this group as you need. So I'm again going to click the OK. And the conference requested is an area where we can work with where we've got a special grade that we're using, which is a left square bracket and a CK. And what that is, it's going to, if the teacher gives this grade, it's going to put a check mark in the report card. So we're going to use the check mark to say, yes, there is a conference requested for either first trimester or at the end of second trimester. The other groups that we have here have to do, for the most part, with what grade is assigned for next school year. And we've split them out based on the report card of our intermediate, primary, or kindergarten, so the teachers are only going to use the grades that apply to them. At any point in any of these, we can always go to the question mark or the F1 button, and that's going to bring up help for the area that we're working with. So when we come in here, what we have is a area where it's going to show us that it knows we're doing the edit valid grades for skill groups. So it knows that's exactly where we are, and it's going to help us with how do we set up what we need. So the help is always here, ready for you whenever you need it. You can, if you want, right-click on the area you're working with and go to print if you want a hard copy, or save it to PDF if you have a PDF capture as one of your print drivers, which makes it very handy for you to work with. I'm going to go ahead and close out of that and continue with what I'm working with here. Once you're in this area, you can also go to the printer button if you'd like to get a printout of the grades that you're using here. And that's just, you hit the printer, brings up the report for what we're editing, and you can print all of them. You can opt to print certain ones, and then you just hit the print. And that's going to bring it up so that you can have a list of the different groups that you're working with and their descriptions. If you wanted to, you could go to the output option, and you can, the default has been that we're previewing to screen, but you can also save it either to a text file, a PDF, a portable document file, or to an Excel spreadsheet, if you would so choose. And that gives you the ability to use it and, save it externally and then be able to share it with your teachers and such. The teachers are also going to be able to open up when they're entering their grades and be able to get that list also. So you don't necessarily have to create paper copies. I'm going to go ahead and exit out. So now that we have the different grade groups, we need to set up the skills. And to do that, we're going to go in under Advanced Skills and come in to Edit Skill Groups and Skills. The skill group is up to 12 characters. You can use letters, numbers, and the underline. What I did is I started the grade skill group here with the letter of the type of report card it is. So all of the P underscores are for the primary report card, the I's are for intermediate, and the K is for kindergarten. and then we added the name of the group that we're working with. The first time you add a skill, when you're adding the skill group, you're going to get 4 dashes as the skill ID. And then you give a description of what it is. If you need to edit that description, you can go ahead and click the Edit button, and that lets you modify what's here. After that, it's going to show a skill order. The first level, the skill group ID, is always skill order 0, and all the other ones after that are a sequential number, which lets you see the order of when the teacher brings up the skills for that particular group. This is the order they're going to be in. And usually you order them in the order of what's on the report card. Once you've added the skill group in, you can then add an individual skill. The skill ID is up to 4 characters, usually using letters and numbers. You again give it a description of what is the specific skill that the teachers are going to be entering. So in this case for Christian values, the first skill is that they model Christian values. You would then be able to give it and assign a grade group as to which grades you're going to use for this particular skill. And the grade group doesn't have to be the same for each skill. If I scroll down and look at the different areas, we're going to see a lot of this is the EPIN. The exceeds expectations is proficient, is in progress, or is not taught this term. So it does give that ability to work with it. But if I come down to my notes, conference, or assigned to grade area, I will see that I use a different skill group here, where I'm using my conf one. So I do the conference. And then I have a PGA because this is the grade assigned for the primary. My instructional support has a yes/no for whether the learning plan is in place. But the progressing towards goals of that learning plan, we're going to use an EPI standard so that we know where that student is in relation to the learning plan. The group order is sort of an overall within the group, what order do I want to see them in? The way I set the groups up was all of the primaries are in the 100 range. The intermediates are in the 400 range, and the kindergarten is in the 900s. It was just a way to group them together. When you add an individual skill in, it will default and give you check marks for each of the marking periods. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So I can see here's the grade, the note, the trimester 2 grade and the note, trimester 3 and the note. And as we continue right, we can see where we have the final average. There are areas, if you'd like, to be able to put in state standard codes for something like Common Core. When you start getting into that area, you can also do the anchoring. You want to check whether the individual skill is reportable or not. And by default, they're all reportable. The tiering is you can do different areas. If I scroll back over to the left, and we can look at different areas of it, might be, say, with the math, I have certain areas in one area or in another. So it lets me do subsets if I so choose. For what we're doing here, we're not going to get into anything that complex. The areas we're mostly dealing with is what grades are we working with. Now on the primary report cards, the primary report cards do not use the final average, the final grade, so I would come in here and uncheck them because I don't need them for the primary report card. I would need them for the intermediate, but not for primary or kindergarten. When I'm working with the notes area, one of my skills is it actually is the note, so I want to check the note to make sure it's available. The note is a free-form area that you can put in as long a note as you want. When we do the report card project, there is a way to limit how many characters are actually going to go on the report card. That doesn't stop the teacher from putting in more. It's just going to warn them that only so many are going to go on the report card. Now, if I come back to the left again, I can see that for my conference requested, I had a little extra notation here that entered the date of the conference in the note. So this is going to give the teachers the ability to do a check mark if they want a conference with the parent, and then use the note to put in the date of that conference. So it's all in the teacher's control. The assigned grade is only going to be available on the third trimester because it's where they're going next year. So you can even do that with this grade is only going to be entered once. You can have as many of these skill groups and or skills as you want. There is a facility to be able to import these skills from a text file, but that's a session that we're going to touch on later. You do have the ability that if you need to, you can add more skills or modify the ones that you're using from one school year to the next. So I'm going to go ahead and save and exit out of here. So thank you for participating.